After living and working in more than 100 different countries around the world, there's one thing I know more than just about anyone, and that's with travel visas. Today, I'm going to share everything I know about working and traveling around the world, what visas are the best to have for people getting started, or depending on where you want to go in the world, I'm going to talk about the 5 best visas. And these are going to be catered to Americans, but not just for Americans. A lot of these are going to be eligible for other countries. Some of them are going to be free, some of them are going to be paid, and I'll disclose everything you need to know about the best places and the best visas out there. Now, let's kick it off with the actual difference between these types of visas. There's a few nuances that are super important to understand. The biggest difference that I want to share with you is what is the difference between a visa and a visa-free requirement. I know it sounds pretty simple, but essentially a visa is something that you're going to need a file for either online or at a consulate or embassy. Usually there's some paperwork and typically a fee and waiting period involved. The visa-free stuff is basically you just show up to a country with your passport and they let you in for some required period of time. There are a few other weird things like the new European travel requirement. Everyone visiting Europe in 2025 is going to need a ETIAS, which is essentially a travel authorization, meaning you can apply for this online and then you can travel after you get approved. It's a little bit different. It's not really a visa and it's not necessarily a visa-free option. But again, I made a whole video about that process, which I'll leave below. So anybody going to Europe in the next year, you'll want to make sure you watch that. So without further ado, let's dig into the 5 best visas out there. And again, these are hand selected for Americans, but there's a lot of different variations, and almost every single visa I mentioned here is going to be good for about 90 countries, and in some cases 20 to 30. So I'll delve into which ones those are. Georgia, the country, not the state, has one of the most generous visa options for Americans, and this visa option allows you to stay in the country for up to a year. And again, the best part about this is it's a visa-free option, meaning all you need is your passport. You can show up to the country of Georgia, you can be welcomed in for over a year. After that year period, all you have to do is go out and you can come back in. Meaning you can take a trip to the border, cross over to some countries like Turkey or Armenia, and then you can come back for a full year. This is one of the most generous visa options out there. And the great thing about it, it's not just for Americans, it's free for hundreds of countries out there. And basically you'll want to check to see if your country is on the list, but I guarantee you pretty much every country that I've seen is eligible for this visa option. There's a few that aren't, but luckily almost every major country is on the list, meaning it's very accessible from people all around the world. There's a lot of other great reasons for Georgia, but I'll dig into that on another video. Imagine being able to show up in a country and work any job that the locals can do. Now, this is where a work and travel visa comes into play. And one of the best countries out there for this is Australia. Meaning if you're in between the ages of 18 to 30, you can actually show up in Australia and work an Australian job. Meaning you can work there and travel there for up to a year. Now, there are a few requirements, meaning you need to show a certain cash balance or savings. You need to have a diploma, and you also need to go through a few other criteria. But overall, this visa is pretty seamless. You can apply online, you can get approved, and then you can start applying for local jobs in Australia pretty much immediately. The cost to apply for this visa is about $400, and it took me around 3 or 4 weeks when I did this. This was a great way to explore Australia, and I was able to go in it with a different mindset than most people. Most people go there looking for backpacker jobs, working in hostels, or working on a farm actually. I went in with a different mindset and actually started working for an Australian tech company where I was making more money, was able to work remotely, and had a lot of better flexibility to work and travel around Australia. Again, if you go in it with this mindset, there's going to be a lot of great opportunities for you. And guys, if you learned something new there, you're going to love this next part. I've partnered up with Amazon's Audible to give you a free copy of my #1 best-selling book, Global Career: How to Work Anywhere and Travel Forever. Global Career has been featured in prestigious publications like Forbes, CNBC, Entrepreneur Magazine, and even Lonely Planet. And with over 500 positive reviews, This book has helped hundreds of thousands earn from anywhere. To get your free copy and start a 30-day free trial of Audible, all you have to do is visit globalcareerbook.com/audio today, or just scan the QR code on the screen here. If you're like me and you love Lord of the Rings, can you imagine living a year where Hobbiton is made, where the Lord of the Rings was filmed? Now, I'm talking about New Zealand, of course, where you can spend upwards to a year living and working in New Zealand. And the process to actually go through this is as easy as filling out a simple application online. Now, what I'm talking about is the New Zealand Work and Travel Visa, which is good for 1 year. And the primary requirements are you need to be between the ages of 18 to 30, have a university degree, and have some proof of savings, meaning that you can show that you're able to live and support yourself in the country. Usually it's around $5,000. This visa costs around $400 in total. You can apply online, and I was actually approved in under a week, but sometimes it can take upwards to 4 weeks. The cool thing about this visa is it gives you the opportunity to live and work in a local company, meaning I was able to show up in New Zealand and I actually found a job within under 2 weeks. And to give you some perspective, I've lived in other countries like South Korea where it took me 6 months where I couldn't really find a job. So I moved from South Korea, and the biggest hurdle there was I didn't have the right visa to work for most South Korean companies. But when I moved to New Zealand, I had the right visa and I had the right approach to finding jobs. So within 2 weeks, I was able to find a job working for a tech startup, being able to work remotely and kind of live and work a very flexible structure. So again, this is another great option for living and working overseas. And it's one of the best visa options I see out there. And I don't see a lot of people talking about it. This isn't just for Americans. There's a lot of countries that are eligible for this visa. Imagine working in one of the most beautiful countries that has the best food. They call it the land of smiles. And there's so many beautiful, gorgeous islands. You'll have a hard time picking which one to choose. The country I'm talking about is Thailand, and they just announced a brand new digital nomad visa that is taking swarm of the internet. This visa is one of the best options I've seen out there, and it's so glad to hear all the rumors swarming around this visa actually come true. So the cool things about this Thailand digital nomad visa is it's good for up to 5 years, meaning you only have to pay a one-time fee, and then once you're approved, it's good for 5 years. Before this, you usually had to pay $20,000 to $30,000 for a visa of something similar. And the great thing about this visa is it only costs about $400, and that's good for that 5-year period. As far as the requirements, you need to prove that you have around $12,000 in savings or more. You also need to prove that you have some type of remote income, meaning you're not going to come to Thailand and take their jobs. You're going to be able to sustain yourself for that long-term period of time, and you're going to need to prove that you have some job or income that can be done remotely. This visa is good for 6 months, but then you can actually extend it for an additional 6 months. Now, how the logistics of all this stuff work is very new because this visa was just announced about a couple weeks ago. If you want to make sure you have all the up-to-date knowledge, just search the digital nomad visa for Thailand. And by the time this video comes out, I'll make sure to leave a link below for how you can actually apply for this visa directly. One thing is you likely need to apply directly at a Thai embassy, which you can find in most countries. Luckily, there's a lot in the United States and anywhere else in Europe. So this is one of the best visa options I've seen out there, and it's something that I'm likely going to apply for within the next year. Did you know there's only 2 countries in the world where Americans can show up and stay for an entire year without needing to apply for some visa, meaning you can show up with your passport and stay in this country for a year. Now, the country I'm talking about is Albania, and the second country is the country of Georgia. Now, Albania is a really cool option because it's fairly close to Europe. It's not technically in the EU, but it really gives you some good access to other parts of Europe. Albania has some beautiful coastal towns, beautiful beaches, and it's just a really great place if you're looking to go a little bit off the beaten path of the typical places like Portugal or Spain and want to experience something that's just a little bit different than what most people experience. Albania can be a really good option for you. Now, if you go to Europe, You get 90 days as a tourist, but you can go to Albania, plant some roots, and really build a community and culture while you're there. And that kind of leads me to this, is a lot of these visa options are so attractive for longer term people because you don't want to have to be dealing with this. You don't have to leave the country every 30 days or every 60 days. It does get a little annoying, and especially if you're trying to have stable relationships, stable friendships, a stable routine. Getting out and having to change countries every 30 days can be a real big hassle. And I understand it's not for everyone. So what I suggest for most people, try a few places out as a tourist, see what you like, and then if you like it there, you can look at some of these longer term visa options. If you want to stay in a country long term, there's almost always an option for you. You can go to online classes, you can start a business, you can find friends who can help you work there. There's always going to be some way to do this legally with staying overseas longer term. These are the 5 best visa options out there. And if you like this video, I'm going to leave a video up here that's hand selected for you. And if you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe about new videos I'm putting out every single week.